Hi, welcome to the Second Rainbow Coalition Reading Group. Today we are reading Chapter 20 of Ojibwa Warrior, Dennis Banks and the Rise of the American Indian Movement. We're going to begin with the Second Rainbow Coalition Statement of Unity. Comrade Gabby, you have the floor.
Thank you, Comrade Sentinel. I will begin reading the Statement of Unity preface. All right, there we go. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them into quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As European Union stated, we have two enemies to fight: racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined the coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements. The masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against the capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model for class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, said that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle, quote unquote. He said that it's a class struggle, god damn it. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition, therefore the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire oppressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the first of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organizations, and other original Young Rainbow Coalition members, we established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations to our coalition in a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the original coalition, New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Masa Nacional de Brown Berets, Nassau, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, Guardian Rebellion, and American Indian Movement, NE Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner that will bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, no one is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the Statement of Unity. All power, comrades.
All power. Let me go ahead and screen share the book.
And Sister Zen, whenever you get tired, I will happily read for you.
Thank you. Chapter 20, Fields of Terror. An extraordinary number of unresolved homicides and incidents of terror and violence have unfortunately become commonplace on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Arthur S. Fleming, U.S. Commissioner on Civil Rights. Sometimes I am surprised at being alive. From 1972 to 1976, the Pine Ridge Reservation was a killing field, and I spent a great deal of time there. More than 300 people are reported to have met a violent end in this place of fear and suppression. I have a list of 62 confirmed murders. The vast majority of these victims were killed by the BIA police, FBI agents, and Dickie Wilson's goons. Most of the victims were members of AIM or sympathizers, adherents of OSCRO, the Oglala Civil Rights Organization, or traditional full-bloods who had no liking for Wilson's way of ruling the res. Over 90% of the killings and other violent hate crimes were never even investigated. Pine Ridge in those days was described as a place of shootings, knifings, beatings, firebombings, and every other kind of assault.
Sister, your voice sounds far away. Like all of a sudden, it sounded like you were like really far away.
Is that better?
Yep, that's better. Sorry.
Okay, I'm glad you let me know. I just needed to move the laptop closer. Since I was at the top of Wilson's hate list, as well as on that of the FBI and State Attorney General Janklows, I was a prime target for being, quote, wasted. I thank the spirits in my luck for being alive to write this story. Basic rights taken for granted everywhere else in this country had been suspended on the reservation by Wilson's order. I myself, an American Indian, was forbidden to set foot on Pine Ridge land, and so at times was Russell Means, though he was a member of the Oglala tribe. Wilson once stated publicly that he would, quote, personally cut off Russell's braids, end quote, if he should dare to come to the res. The tribal president had a crude poster on the wall of his office that stated, one of Russell Means' braids cut off, $5. 2 braids, $10. Means whole head pickled, $100. So this motherfucker was literally putting up a poster calling to like kill and behead Russ. That's really fucked up.
What the fuck?
That shouldn't have even been fucking allowed. What a piece of shit.
That's disgusting. Fucking hell.
One local Indian newspaper, the Shannon County News, described the situation. Mr. Wilson, our local goofball, who set himself up as the Hitler of Pine Ridge, has denied Indian people freedom of the press, guaranteed under the First Amendment of the Constitution. He has denied our people freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. The question now is, will all of our Sioux who opposed him be escorted to the reservation lines to be forced into exile? If this local bully continues, it may come to that. This was written at the beginning of Wilson's rule before it turned deadly. A clipping from the New York Times dated July 6, 1975, describes the situation at that time in this paper's manner of cautious understatement. There have been at least 8 killings on the reservation so far this year, along with uncounted fights, beatings, and outbreaks of shooting. Some of the incidents are still unexplained, but added together, they have created an atmosphere of terror between Mr. Wilson's mixed blood supporters, universally known as the Goon Squad, and the supporters of the American Indian movement, allied with full-blood traditionalists. The United States Civil Rights Commission said in a staff report that the tribal election in which Mr. Wilson won a narrow victory over AIM leader Russell Means was marked by irregularities in that perhaps a third of the votes were improper. Mr. Wilson, a jaunty man with a large paunch who habitually wears dark glasses, has run matters with such a, quote, firm hand that one previous BIA reservation superintendent was fond of saying that he himself was a puppet to the chairman's domineering personality. His opponents have often charged that he ran a corrupt and dictatorial administration backed up by the intimidation of the Goon Squad, most of whom hold government jobs. Sorry. In addition to his salary, Mr. Wilson lives in the relative luxury of federally subsidized housing, is raising cattle, horses, and alfalfa, and has a trucking operation. In the 1974 election for tribal chairman, Wilson won a narrow victory over Russell Means, though Russ actually won more votes through widespread election fraud. Wilson forced his council members to watch a film, Anarchy USA, which suggested that communism was using AIM to bring about a worldwide communist takeover. Sorry, give me a second, I need a drink.
That's fine.
The FBI and BIA supported Wilson in his anti-AIM campaign. Government money paid for his goons and for their weapons. Everything else paled, though, when it came to the actual murders. Respected conservatives and former council members began fleeing the res, choosing to live someplace outside rather than become targets for tribal police in goon violence. One of my dearest friends, Pedro Bissonette, was one such victim. On October 17, 1973, he was brutally murdered by BIA police. The news of his death struck me hard. The thought that I would never see him alive again, seemed unbearable to me. Pedro had created the OSCRO, which opposed the Wilson dictatorship. He was a spokesman for traditional full-bloods who resisted the regime. He supported AIM and was a thorn in Dickie Wilson's side, so he was set up to be killed. Pedro had been under surveillance since Wounded Knee. He had a carefree attitude and shrugged off all warnings to be watchful. Friends had warned Pedro never to drive alone, but he just laughed and told them not to worry. One night, Pedro stopped for a beer at a bar in White Clay, Nebraska, just a few miles south of the res. A white man tried to provoke Pedro into a fight, cursing and physically attacking him. Pedro, who had been a boxer in his youth, knocked the fellow down and walked out. The instigator immediately pressed charges for assault and battery against Pedro. The court obligingly issued a bench warrant for Pedro's arrest, describing him as armed and dangerous with orders to shoot to kill. Pedro was waylaid by 2 or more BIA policemen on a lonely Pine Ridge road. One of them was Joe Clifford, a personal enemy and goon. The other was Del Eastman, a special agent for the BIA and a confirmed Sioux hater from the Crow Reservation in Montana. Pedro died from multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. He had been shot point blank at a range of 2 feet. There was never an investigation of Pedro's death. I wanted to be with Pedro's family for his funeral, but I could not do so because I would have been arrested as soon as I set foot on the res. I told Ames' lawyer and friend Ramon Rubido to relay my deepest prayers and condolences to the family. I felt low and devastated. But even though I could not go to Pedro, he came to me. His family arranged for the funeral procession to come to the reservation border where I would be waiting a few feet short of the boundary line. Ramon drove me to the border and we stopped right in front of the BIA police cars sitting on the other side. We waited for 15 minutes, then in the distance saw the lights of many cars slowly coming towards us. There were at least 100 of them. The procession came to a stop. I stood in silence as Pedro's friends brought the casket out and carried it over to a spot near me. They opened the lid and let me see Pedro's face for the last time. It was one of the saddest moments of my life. With tears in my eyes, I fumbled in my pocket for the aim patch I had brought. I placed it on his heart and I held him for a moment before I sprinkled some sage into his coffin. I told the hundreds of people who had come about Pedro's gentleness, his sense of humor, his compassion for the poor, the sick, the children, and the elderly, how he always managed to provide food for the hungry and a roof over the head of the homeless. I talked about his courage in the face of death. I said Pedro was small of body, but he had a heart as big as the universe. The coffin was closed and placed in the hearse. The cars made their U-turns and drove slowly back the way they had come. I waved farewell to them until they were out of sight. With Pedro's murder, the real terror began. Violence and bloodshed became almost daily events. None of the attackers ever worried about concealing their identities. They were under Wilson's protection. As a result, their names and crimes became common knowledge. In June 1973, BIA police shot Clarence Cross and his brother Vernal while the brothers slept in their car parked on the roadside. Clarence was killed outright. Vernal was severely wounded. Both were AIM members. In the fall of 1974, goons were firing M16s into the home of the Little Bear family when one of the bullets shot out the eye of 4-year-old Mary Ann Little Bear. During the same period, Helen Redfeather was attacked by the goons. They sprayed mace in her face and brutally kicked her in the side, though she pleaded with them that she was 4 months pregnant. On November 20th, 15-year-old Allison Littlehorse was found dead in a ditch, a bullet through his heart. All of these victims were AIM members or their children. Jeanette Bissonnette was shot and killed by a sniper as she returned from a wake. She was Pedro's sister-in-law. Nobody was safe. The outrageous violence culminated on February 27th, 1975. A group of 4 lawyers, 2 legal aides, and a Wounded Knee defendant arrived at Pine Ridge to investigate the civil rights abuses on the reservation. They landed at the Pine Ridge Airport in a private plane, then went by car to interview people on the res. When they came back to the airport, they found the plane shot full of bullet holes. They unloaded the plane, put their bags into the car, and prepared to leave. At that moment, Dick Wilson arrived with about a dozen vehicles full of goons. These thugs kicked in the windshield of the investigator's car and actually tore off its roof to get to the people inside. The goons dragged the passengers out of the car and asked Wilson, "Dickie, what shall we do with them?" He said, "Stomp them." The goons at once attacked the lawyers and legal aides, knocking them to the ground, kicking and trampling them while also beating them severely. One went after Roger Finzel, one of the young lawyers, with his knife, slashing at the lawyer's face and trying to hack his hair off because the hoodlum thought it was too long. Ida Gordon, one of the 2 legal aides, threw herself across Finzel in an attempt to protect him. Her hand was badly cut by the goon's knife. Wilson threatened to kill his victims if they ever came back to the res. All members of the legal team wound up in the Rapid City Hospital. This was not the end of the violence, even though one event seemed an answer to our prayers. Dick Wilson had finally been defeated. He lost his bid for a 3rd term as tribal chairman by a 3-to-1 margin. The winner was a former BIA superintendent and longtime Wilson opponent, Al Trimble. Unfortunately, Wilson had 2 months left before he had to relinquish his office, during which time he wielded absolute power. One newspaper quoted a Pine Ridge resident as saying, "Dick Wilson is very angry about his election loss. He has promised death and destruction to those who worked against him." The little reservation town of Wanblee, South Dakota was Al Trimble's home. Its inhabitants were mostly full-bloods who had voted overwhelmingly for their homeboy. Wilson told his henchmen that Wanblee has to be straightened out. Shortly after that, on January 31st, 1976, several carloads of heavily armed goons drove into the town. They wore government-issue bulletproof vests and were armed with AR-15 rifles. They began by firing into the house of AIM sympathizer Guy Dolknife. Even though witnesses positively identified some of the goons, the FBI took no action against them. Instead, they arrested Dolknife and his wife, Pearl. Then the goons firebombed the house of Charlie Aborich, the son of U.S. Senator James Aborich, who had on several occasions criticized the tribal chairman. Later, Wilson threw Charlie off the reservation. Even a senator's son was not safe from Wilson's vindictiveness. It was clear Wilson felt sure the government would support him no matter what crimes he committed. Byron DeSursa was a tribal attorney and an AIM supporter who had been with us at Wounded Knee. Seeing the goons shooting out windows and firebombing houses and knowing he was a target, he decided to leave Wanblee. His car was overtaken by goons as they riddled the vehicle with bullets. 3 shots tore through DeSursa's leg, almost severing it. He dragged himself into a ditch. All the other passengers in his car fled except George Beltillon, who tried to help the attorney. DeSursa told George to run like hell and save himself. Byron DeSursa bled to death while the goons chased the other occupants of the car. His life probably could have been saved by a simple tourniquet. Random shooting continued throughout the night at Wanblee. Neither of the 2 FBI agents who had arrived at Wanblee that afternoon, nor the BIA police made any effort to put a stop to the vigilantes running amok. An FBI spokesman justified this by saying the agents had no authority to act in a protective capacity, even though people had appealed to them for help. In spite of the obvious danger during these terrible times at Pine Ridge, Kamuk and I lived on the reservation in the little settlement of Oglala, South Dakota. Not only did we have strong family ties to the res, but I also felt that our people there needed a strong AIM presence to give them some measure of protection from the goons. The Oglala community welcomed us, having asked AIM to stay nearby after Wounded Knee because they were afraid of the goons. The people at Oglala were mostly traditional, Lakota-speaking full-bloods, and for that reason were constantly harassed by Wilson's henchmen. Do you want to read for a while?
Sure. Let me just zoom in. Where were you again?
I had become very close to the Jumping Bull family.
Gotcha. I had become very close to the Jumping Bull family. They had a big hall at Oglala called the Jumping Bull Hall, where lots of AIM events took place. The family owned at least 50 acres of land, including a large wooded area with a creek. I asked Cecilia Jumping Bull if the AIM people could stay on their land. It was clear that we needed space for an AIM camp instead of crawling into people's homes and possibly putting them at risk. She got together with her family and they agreed, saying, "You can camp on our land if you want to, maybe down by the creek." We scouted for a good location, decided to establish our camp in a place people called the Dam area, on the lower part of the Jumping Bull property. We put up 4 tips and a number of tents. We had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do with the surrounding 2 or 3 acres, like raising some crops in a big garden. And in the spring, we plowed up about 3 acres using using a truck to pull. Sorry, let me just get rid of this right here. There we go. To pull a handmade improvised plow back and forth over the field. It was a crazy method, but it worked. Soon we had formed quite a community there. People started coming down from Pine Ridge. Kamuk's sisters dropped in and stayed a while, as did many other friends. Some came on the weekends, and when we drummed and sang. At any given time, we might have 50 30, 40, or 50 people spending an evening with us. The camp had become very popular. Among the people who had come to live there was my old friend Leonard Peltier, a
Leonard.
Lakota. Leonard Peltier, a Lakota Anishinaabe, from the Turtle Anishinaabe, from the Turtle Mountain Reservation, 4 miles north of Belcourt, North Dakota. His joining us forever changed his life. In 1975, I was once more a defendant, this time in a trial at Custer, South Dakota, some 50 miles west of Oglala. For my role during the confrontation at the Custer courthouse after Wilsley Badhart Bull was murdered, I was out on $10,000 of bail. The trial started June 16th. The pre-trial motions were heard in a heavily secured courtroom. Spectators were forced to give their names and addresses, told to empty their pockets, purses, and briefcases, and then made to walk through electric sensors. Even the baby was subjugated to having his diaper scanned. Bro, what the fuck? These guys are paranoid as fuck. That's how you know. That's how you know they're scared of AIM. You know, that's how you know they were fucking terrified by them.
Right, that's God. Ridiculous to be like, we gotta scan the baby's diaper.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like just in case, you know, I mean, hey, you know, you're never too young to be a revolutionary, right?
Right.
There's a fucking AK-47 in the baby's diaper. Fucking hell. Sorry, where was I?
The courthouse windows.
All right, the courthouse windows and the judge's bench were reinforced with quarter-inch steel plates, and 40 South Dakota police officers were brought in to quote-unquote guard the proceedings. Sure. An additional squad of armed volunteers, including the local sheriff's deputies, state troopers, and state game, fish, and park employees, increased the number of law enforcement personnel. All of these protective measures have been carefully orchestrated by William Janclo. Clearly, he hoped his security circus would increase fear and apprehension of AIM in the jurors and the public. Janclo was by then the state attorney general, the highest law enforcement official in South Dakota. From the first day of court, I could see that I could not expect a fair trial at Custer. Judge Marshall Young imposed a gag rule on the press. He forbade reporters covering the trial from giving out any information except that which occurs in open courts, adduced only in evidence. Sorry. For what happened? There we go. Sorry. Adduced only in evidence and arguments. This meant, for example, that if someone had shot the judge inside the courtroom, the reporters could not mention it. It was a ridiculous situation. That's fucking ridiculous as fuck. And they're actively fucking preventing people from reporting on it and giving any information from the outside. Fucking disgusting.
It's a
Um,
violation of the First Amendment because the press actually have the freedom to report everything that's going on there.
Yep.
You know?
Bro, that makes no sense. So much for freedom of speech, because the only people who it's only freedom of speech if you uphold white supremacy. It's only freedom of speech if you uphold and you support the contradictions of capitalism, and you support the pockets of the bourgeois and you kiss their ass. But if you want liberation, nah, you don't get that. It's only freedom of speech for those who actually uphold the contradictions of capitalism and no one else.
Right.
Let me sorry. Um, I'm
It was a
sorry.
ridiculous
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, it was a ridiculous situation. The judge also forbade all quote unquote extrajudicial statements or any release of any leads, gossip, or information obtained outside the court. The gag rule also barred reporters from giving their own interpretation of the trial, speculating on the merits of the case, or mentioning the credibility of the witnesses. This right here, this like in stark contrast to the last time Dennis Banks was in court, where the judge was actually, was actually not a piece of shit. um. So yeah. Um. Let me just.
It was pointed out to me.
Yeah. Sorry. It was pointed out to me that the gag order would also protect the jury from outside influence, and that in consideration of the prejudice whites South Dakotans had against me and AIM, and the influence such people might have on a jury, it would be favorable in my defense. I did not see it that way. Jean-Claude had decided to try me personally, making the trial a face-off between two men who, in the purest form, represent the opposing views of two races. Jean-Claude himself read the charges against me. The prosecution claimed that my trial was merely an ordinary criminal case, and neither a political nor a sociological experiment. Sure. While giving my own opening statement, I made it crystal clear that this was a purely political trial, and that in trying me, they were trying AIM. I told the jury that the state of South Dakota had created an atmosphere that led directly to a police riot, and that the question was not whether I was guilty or not, but a question of whether we would find the state guilty or not. I acted as my own attorney because their veneer of
No, you skipped a line.
oh sorry. Acted as my own attorney because when I questioned jurors for selection, I was able to get underneath their veneer of impartiality to the racism hiding beneath it, like lifting a rock to expose a mass of slimy worms. During the entire trial, I strove to keep my face impassive and to speak quietly, even while making witnesses squirm under my questions. I managed to remain calm even when while Jean-Claude browbeat and coerced defense witnesses. Jean-Claude was petulant. I have no idea what that word means. He whined and complained when he did not get his way, and smirked and gloated when he did. Sounds like a fucking man-child. Not surprising.
That's pretty
For the
much what
duration,
petulant means. Yeah.
yeah,
Overgrown toddler.
gotcha. There's a slang term in where I'm from which is jit, like GIT, and it basically means like child, basically.
Yeah.
Um for the duration of the trial, I traveled each weekday to Custer in the morning and back to Oglala in the evening, where Kamuk, Tashina, and I were living in a two-room green painted paper and log shack we rented from the Jumping Bull family. Our home was located near the was near the AIM camp, which had come to be known as Tent City. Harry Jumping Bull, who was then in his 80s, and his wife Cecilia, who had just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Aw. It was also the anniversary of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where General Custer had met defeat and death. Fuck yeah. Late in the afternoon of June 25th, 1975, two FBI agents and two BIA policemen showed up at the Jumping Bull Ranch. They wanted to search the house for a young Indian named Jimmy Eagle, who reportedly had stolen a pair of old cowboy boots from a white youth at a party. Bro, why the fuck would anyone want old cowboy boots? That makes no fucking sense. Um, they wanted to search the house for. Sorry, I already read that. They checked out the area, asked a few questions, and left. That night we had heavy thunderstorms and tornado conditions. Kamuk and I were up during the night because little Tashina had developed an ear infection. Tashina is their child, correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure because I'm bad with remembering names and who's who. In the morning, we decided that Kamuk would take her to Pine Ridge Hospital while I went to Custer for the trial. Had we remained at the camp that day, who knows if any of us would still be alive or if I would be serving out a life sentence in federal prison. Leonard Peltier was running the camp in my absence. He had assigned Joe Stunts kills right, a young, tall, rather shy. I don't know how to pronounce it. Cordeline Indian as my bodyguard. Is that French? It sounds French.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. As my bodyguard, every day I picked up Joe early and took him. Sorry. Every day I picked up Joe early and took him with me to Custer. On this particular day, however, I gave him the day off because he had not slept well. I went down to the camp at about 4 a.m. to wake up two of our security people to go with me to Custer, while Kamuk took off for Pine Ridge with the baby. Promptly at 9 o'clock, trial proceedings began at the Custer courthouse. Sometime after the mid-morning break, our defense committee's runners came in and asked the court for permission to hand me a note. Oh, sorry. Sorry. To hand me a note saying there was trouble at Glala. A short time after, the committee workers returned to say there's a shooting out of Glala. At that moment, a state trooper whispered something to Attorney General Janklow, who rose and asked if we could all approach the bench. He explained to the judge that because there was violence breaking out at Pine Ridge, he wanted to have the trial put in recess for the day so he could take charge of the situation. I knew it had to be Tent City that was under attack. I was very worried about Kamuk. I quickly called the hospital to find out when she had last been seen. They said she had left an hour before. I was afraid that she and the baby were already back at the camp under fire, and I was concerned for everybody out there. Once outside the courthouse, I took off immediately for Oglala. What actually happened on that fateful morning of June 26th can only be reconstructed from what was reported by people who were there. Late in the morning, two strange cars appeared on a Jumping Bull property. They stopped near the creek behind the main house. Two high-powered
You skipped a line. Two federal agents.
Two federal agents, Ronald Williams and Jack Kohler, got out and removed a high-powered .308 rifle and a handgun from the trunk of one car. They were the same two men who had shown up that evening before on the pretext of searching for Jimmy Eagle, and the year before, the same Ronald Williams, then a member of a SWAT team, had aroused the anger of Judge Nicole at the Banks Means trial with his gross professional misconduct. Also near the main house was a red pickup truck occupied by a few people from camp who were either arriving or leaving. Some of the people of Tent City were not yet awake because of the heavy storms and the babies that had cried all night before. A few young Indians leaned on a car waiting for some hot oatmeal the women were fixing. Angie Long, visitor, was in the main house washing breakfast dishes while her four small children played outside. Suddenly she heard sounds like firecrackers. She ran to a bluff behind the house to see what was going on. From there, she observed two white men in civilian clothing firing guns in the direction of the camp. Angie and her husband grabbed their children and fled. The agents were using their two-way radios to call for help. Looks like they're shooting at us. Looks like they're shooting at us. The next calls were urgent. Come on, guys, come on. Then we've been hit. Kohler was hit in the arm. It seems that Williams took off his shirt to make a tourniquet to stop Kohler's bleeding. Then Williams was it all happened pretty fast. Within a short time, the two agents and Joe Strunt's kills right, the young Indian I had given the day off were all lying dead on the ground. Joe had been shot in the head as he ran toward a small outbuilding for cover. His death struck all of us deep in the heart. I wondered why I hadn't taken him with me that day. Now his wife and two small children would have to live without him. Joe had wanted to become a medicine man and had studied in the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Worst of all, there would never be any investigation into this quiet man's senseless death. He lay there all day and into the night while shots continued to be exchanged. It was very strange how immediately after the first bursts of gunfire, the BIA and the feds appeared on the scene with every kind of heavy weaponry. Cars sped into the area in clouds of dust. Agents were suddenly elsewhere, as though they had been waiting just over the next hill. For weeks, we had noticed a heavy buildup of law enforcement people on and around the res. 60 or more new FBI agents, most of them members of the SWAT teams, had created an atmosphere of high anxiety so thick you could taste it. The endless violence of goons with that, with the apparent support of the FBI, had fostered a high trigger tension ready to explode into full-blown war. The presence of so many marshals and FBI agents only encouraged Dick Wilson's thugs to continue their murderous activities. How could the government not have known they were looked upon by traditional Indian people as allies of the goon squads? They had to know that if they ventured into AIM territory, they would surely incite trouble. Tent City quickly became a battle zone. Our people were poorly armed, but at this point, there was nothing they could do but try to defend themselves and provide diversions so others could escape. Some of the men in our camp, Leonard Peltier, Bob Rubidoux, a distant relative of Ramon Rubidoux, our attorney, and Dino Butler, felt that this might be their last day. The only hope was to get out of there. They checked the only available vehicle and found it was too low on fuel to get them very far. The only way out was through a grove of trees that was fast being taken over by the feds. They hastily gathered some supplies. Someone collected some ammunition and the rifle belonging to Agent Kohler. Then about 60 people took off on foot looking for a miracle. The feds, BIA, police, and vigilante ranchers who had come along for the ride moved in with deadly speed, using high-powered automatic and semi-automatic weaponry, M16s, tear gas bombs, spotter planes, helicopters, and trained marksmen scouring the area for any signs of movement. The feds destroyed the camp. They shot up the houses. They shot the houses, privies, garbage cans, anything at all. They wrecked the jumping bull home, seemingly deliberately destroying even the framed photographs of family members. They put a bullet in the head of a child's doll. The acrid smell of tear gas hung over this entire scene of desolation. The initial arrival of the two agents at Tent City always sorry, what? Is everything okay? Sister Trisha?
Yeah, I was just messaging Joe.
Gotcha. I thought something was going on. Okay, where was I? I got lost.
I think you were at this part right here, the initial
Yeah.
arrival of two agents.
Yeah, I was there. Thank you. The initial arrival of the two agents at Tent City always seemed to me to be a case of calculated provocation. The FBI wanted to create an incident that would give them an excuse to wipe out our camp. I believe, and so do many others, that the Feds set up their own two agents. Collar and Williams were used as bait. The FBI might have not intended for the two agents to die, but they deliberately put them in harm's way. The Feds apparently went looking for trouble, and they found it. They were amazingly well prepared for it. 3 days before the incident, members of the goon squads had begun moving their families off the reservation into Nebraska, along with Dick Wilson's political allies. Then, several hours before the shootout occurred, the goons had already started setting up roadblocks to seal off the highway to and from Oglala and Pine Ridge. After Kohler and Williams fell, more than 50 highly trained marksmen swarmed in, peppering the whole camp with lead. It is a wonder that Leonard and his group of men, women, and children got out of there alive. The terrain in that area consists of open, arid hills and gullies with few trees or natural places to take cover. With the overwhelming odds against the little group of fugitives, it did not seem possible that even a mouse could escape. But the Great Spirit protected them. A bald eagle appeared above them, showing them a way out. They followed it. Leonard and his people had stopped running only long enough to pray, and their prayer was answered by a truly miraculous escape involving a trek of more than 100 miles over barren country. Fucking hell. Wherever they knocked on a door, they were given a meal or a place to rest. Leonard was never denied having fired in the direction of the agents from 150 feet away. Everybody who could grab some kind of weapon fired it to keep the attackers at a distance. But Leonard could not and did not fire the shots that killed the two agents. Even now, the government admits that its specialists actually do not know who killed them. Our camp came under attack by agents of the U.S. government who came in shooting. We hadn't gone against the law to justify an invasion. The FBI admits that they have not the slightest idea of who killed the two agents, yet more than 20 years have passed and still Leonard is in prison for something he did not do. But his strength is with him wherever he is. The prison will never crush him. Is Leonard still alive?
He's still in prison, if I remember right.
Fucking hell.
I'm gonna Google that real quick. Actually, I'm pretty sure that Leonard Peltier is still in prison.
That is just disgusting, bro. What the fuck? The FBI literally admits that they don't even know who killed their two agents, that they actively put in harm's way to start violence with Tent City, and yet they still have him in prison. Like if that just didn't tell you everything, I don't know.
He's been in prison since 1977. He became eligible for parole in 93. But as of last year, he's still incarcerated at the United States Penitentiary, Coleman in Florida.
Oh, in Florida. Oh, damn. He's in my state.
Yeah, and like they need to give him like humanitarian release, compassionate release, because It says here he's got a number of chronic health ailments, including one that's potentially fatal. Doesn't say what though.
God damn, that's disgusting. You know what's the saddest part? I don't know if you. The saddest part is that he wasn't. I'd imagine at least he wasn't there to he wasn't there to see he wasn't at Dennis Banks' funeral because Dennis Banks passed away in like 2019, I believe.
He wasn't at his own son's funeral.
Comrade Joe.
Hey,
Hey.
Joe.
Hi, how you all doing, comrades?
We're doing good. I am so happy that you're here, man.
Yeah, it's been a long couple of weeks since I've been here and there, but I was glad I was able to join in today. And it's perfect timing because I have my girlfriend here, and this is one of the things we do. We're advocates for Leonard Peltier, and it's been 48 years that he's been wrongfully incarcerated. He's 78 years old now.
Jesus,
that
is disgusting.
I did a speech for him in Sacramento when we had our La Mesa conference. They gave me a little bit of the floor space to be able to keep him into awareness and keep him into light. I know we have a lot of political prisoners, but I'm really passionate about this one, being that I'm indigenous also, but just the plight of his story. It's a really sad one. And if you guys don't mind, my girlfriend wanted to share a couple of things. She's sitting across from me, so she didn't want to be on video.
Hi. I'm sorry. I'm going to
introduce yourself.
Hi. My name's Kimberly LaFramboise, and Leonard is a friend of mine and a distant relative. And real quickly, I don't mean to butt in on your conversation, but I overheard part of it, and everything you said was true. Joe said 48 years because Leonard counts the time that he was in seclusion, and there was the largest manhunt in the history of the United States looking for him. He was in Canada fearing for his life. And so he counts those 2 years and then the year that they held him in before they extradited him illegally. And I'm kind of emotional about it.
Sorry.
So he has been in a maximum security prison. He's an elder. He is not in good health. And he's been eligible for a camp for 12 years. He has 10 points, and that means he should have been in a camp years ago, but they leave him there because next year he's coming up for parole, and they cannot release him from a maximum security. They say he's a risk or whatever, and he's been a model inmate. He's an artist, he's a poet, he's a grandfather, he's a father, and all he wants to do is go home to Turtle Mountain. And if there's any way that any of you can call the White House, the number is 202-456-1111. Or even go onto the White House page. And right now there's a clemency petition pending before Biden, and he's ignored it. And
of course, not surprising.
And the UN signed a 17-page finding saying that it was an arbitrary detainment based on racism. And one day I did a list of the constitutional violations in his case, and it amounts to 9 typed pages. And one violation should have gotten him out, and instead he's sitting there. And it's kind of like all of these indigenous people, like, how dare you stand up, and he was there actually teaching them community gardens, and he was working with the children, teaching them how to do gardens. And he was there that day, and his 2 co-defendants, one was Bob Robidoux, his cousin, and the other one was Dino Butler. They were tried separately, and they were found not guilty for self-defense and FBI misconduct. But he was tried before another court because they went judge shopping, and he sits in there today. And if you could write him a letter, he would love to hear from you, and he will write you back. So free Leonard Peltier.
That's thank you so much for that speech that you gave. Kimberly, was it?
Yes, Kimberly.
That's a very lovely name. Thank you so much for giving that. I highly appreciate it, and I will definitely try my best to write him a letter because I didn't really know much about him. Comrade Joe talked to me about him a little bit, but I hadn't known much about his situation until this chapter, coincidentally. And man, that is just fucking disgusting. Like, the FBI literally admits that they have no idea who killed those two fucking agents that they purposely put in danger, and yet he's still in prison. Like that's bullshit. That's
Yeah.
bullshit.
The prosecuting attorney general has stood up for him and said that they do not know who killed the agents and has asked for his release. The prosecuting attorney general of the United States. The judge Haney that presided over his appeal has also gone and advocated for him. Desmond Tutu, Cora King, anyone you can think of, the Dalai Lama, the Pope, have all called for his release, and yet he sits there.
Really?
It's kind of like, yes, and instead of like, it's like, hey, this is what happens to an Indigenous person when they stand up for you. He's kind of like that head on the stake when you walk into the you guys better not cause any problems here, you know. But Leonard is a kind person. He is a gentle person. He's a spiritual person, and it's what they have done to him, but he holds hope, and it's our hope also and our encouragement that has kept him going all these years. And so, like, again, I would like to, and it was interesting how I heard you say he was unable to attend Dennis Banks' funeral, and they did play Leonard's honor song and there, but he was also unable to attend his parents' funeral. He was also, his son had a heart attack and died at a very young age in Washington,
Oh,
DC.
fuck.
And he was advocating for his father. And
when did this happen?
This has been probably, gosh, maybe I'm not positive of the years, but it's been about 10 years maybe. His own son died in having a heart attack, and he was unable even to go to his funeral. And even with all that, he still advocates for Indigenous people, for their rights, and he has a heart of gold. And I get really emotional about it because, like, I don't think anybody else would have. He starts groups where he brings in the different races, and he has these, like, he teaches them how to come together, like, and I had a book club actually, and one of the men that was a Black gentleman that was there with him, he came and talked heartfelt about it. And if you want to know a little bit about Leonard, he knew him well for 25 years. You might want to listen to that sometime.
You want to mention the gentleman's name?
Yeah, his name's Samuel Kelly, and he talks about Leonard, and he knew him personally for all those years. He was in prison, and with him, and he was in Leavenworth. He was in, like, it's the things that they've done to him are just unbelievable. But he talks about Mother Earth. He talks about planting trees. They planted 48,000 trees on Pine Ridge in his honor. Because he says, if you can't do anything, at least plant a tree for me and for Mother Earth and for future generations. And he walks that red road, and he was able to go to Sundance once before he was caught, or like. So it all goes back to just the natural resources, capitalism, and just trying to and just the disrespect.
Maximize profit.
Yeah. So it was interesting though how you brought up Dennis, because like Dennis, one of the last things he asked his girlfriend at the time was to never stop fighting for Leonard. That was one of on his wish list of things to do for him and honor him after he died, is not to stop fighting for Leonard. So thank you for so much. Thank you for your time.
Of course. And no, please. Sorry.
No, I'll make sure to send some addresses on our group chat so that it'll make it more easy for y'all. Thank you,
Comrade Kimberly. Yes. I have a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if there's any questions before you go, Kimberly, would you like to answer?
I just want to thank you all for just giving me that time to talk about Leonard. It's very dear to my heart, and I appreciate that you guys acknowledged like his struggle and his sacrifice. And thank you. You have a wonderful day. I'll let you get back to your.
Gabby, Comrade Gabby wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask Kimberly, are you a part of UPM or the Second Rainbow Coalition? I'm just curious.
No, I'm not. But Joe has talked highly about the organization and told me a little bit about it. And I think it's an amazing thing. And I'm very proud of you all for what you're doing.
Of course. Well, Kimberly, I hope you have an amazing day. And again, thank you so much for giving your insight. If you are very much welcome to join in these book clubs, because I think your insight would be extremely useful. These book clubs are held every Friday, Sunday, and Monday, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just want to say that.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor to be invited, and I appreciate you. You have a wonderful day.
Of course. You as well, comrade.
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
And Joe, can you send us the information for being able to write to Leonard?
Yeah, same.
Yes, I most definitely will. And of course, we do a lot of advocacy for him, and we can probably post a couple of things on there for you guys for future reads. Also, not so much on the book club, maybe down the road, but for in your personal time. So I'll make sure to get that information out there as soon as we're done here. I don't know how. I don't know how to do it while being on here.
It's all good. Please and thank you. Yeah, I would definitely like to, touch base with him. We're actually getting the UPM prison ministry launched and reaching out to, all prisoners that we, can touch base with, but especially wanting to contact political prisoners like Leonard and, be able to let them know, like, hey, you're not alone. People are still out here fighting for you,
Right, and that lifts his spirits to keep on having hope. I know, even after 48 years, he hasn't given up hope. Got to talk to him in February on the phone, which was, I was like, wow. But whatchamacallit, he really respected the fact that I was still continuing to bring his name into attention and his plight for freedom to attention. And he actually gave me like the blessings to start the Eagle and Condor Coalition.
Nice.
On which is one of my groups on Facebook that I started. So I waited for his direct permission. So I definitely got his direct permission, and we're going to continue working with that as well as many other things. But that's one of the things that I'm really adamant about keeping to attention and
Comrade?
not letting them be forgotten. Yes.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, since you are here, I think it would be awesome if you finished this chapter, Comrade Joe, if you did the honors.
Yeah, they let me borrow some glasses, and if you want to let me know where we got left off, was it?
Here I can highlight right here where it says, for me, not knowing what was happening that day.
Okay.
Can you see the screen share?
Yeah, for me, there. I'm trying to get it to the page that I'm on. Okay, so, and I'm trying to look at it on my notebook. So I'm trying to, for me, not knowing what happened.
It's page 309 of the PDF, but as you can see down here at the bottom, it's actually page 206 of the book itself. So I don't know if you're looking at a hard copy or.
I'm on the PDF.
Okay.
Oh man, one of the BIAs after caller. For me not knowing. Okay, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I was able to get it. Okay. So with that being said, let me move forward in reading this. For me not knowing what was happening that day and the powerlessness I experienced were awful. I was unable to get to Oglala at all. 3 of us had left the courthouse in Custer and driven like hell until we came to the first set of roadblocks. The feds weren't letting anybody through, so we ran the first roadblock, only to be stopped at the second one the FBI had set up. We were pretty close to the camp at this point and could have even hear shooting in the distance. The agents were rude and somewhat hysterical. I kept saying, my wife and child are there. That's where I live. I need to go home and find my family. One of the BIA officers said, go ahead, you're on your own. Walk on in there. The shooting was still audible in the distance. An FBI agent laughed and said to me, go ahead, big chief, start walking. They searched the car, but still did not let us pass. We could see that there were other roadblocks ahead. There was no way to get by car to Oglala or Pine Ridge. We remained at the roadblocks where I finally found somebody who had seen a Canuck in her car with two other people. Their car had also been turned back, so he was not at the camp. The news relieved my mind a little. Excuse me, I'm having trouble reading, but I'm really trying my hardest, so please bear with me.
No problem, comrade.
Late in the afternoon, I could still hear some random shots now and then, but not real exchanges. Families that lived in the area were still running to get so far away as possible from Oglala. When the roadblocks finally came down, I went to Pine Ridge to see the Kamuk's aunt, Lou Bean. She told me that Kamuk had gone to Custer to wait for me. We had a room there that we used sometimes during the trial when it was too late to travel back to Oglala. I was very relieved to find her safe with Tashina. That night, we talked about the events of the day and what each of us had heard and experienced. Canuck told me that at about 9 a.m., she and a nurse at the hospital in Pine Ridge were visiting together while she was waiting to see a doctor. She could see out the window a number of police cars leaving town. In those times, our people knew that when all the police cars headed out of town, they were going after AIM people. Before long, even before the time that the shootout began, there was an announcement over the hospital PA to have all medical staff report to the emergency room staff to receive wounded. A few minutes later, the nurse came running back and told Canuck, there's a lot of killing going on. They're asking for body bags. The following day, a force of more than 150 heavily armed agents began a military-style sweep of civilian homes across the reservation. Without warrants, they entered homes, abused Indians verbally and physically, and made the people of the res feel like victims of a foreign occupation. The FBI and wire services put out lurid stories about the shooting at Jumping Bull's property, saying that the agents had been massacred, executed, ritually tortured, and scalped. With all the inflammatory misinformation, white Southern Dakotans became paranoid. It was certain that under these circumstances, I could not get a fair trial. The trial continued anyway. Within a month of July 26, I was found guilty of assault and riot charges for what had taken place in Custer in February 1973. In front of the same courthouse I now find myself being tried in. I was told to show up on Tuesday, August 5th, for my sentencing. I faced up to 15 years in the penitentiary. Judge Young allowed me to remain free on a pre-sentencing bond of $10,000. He stipulated that I was to check in every day with the local sheriff's office until the day of the sentencing. Junklow threw a fit. He said I was likely to jump bail, and he was right. I thought about it long and hard and concluded that once I had left the courthouse after sentencing, I would be in the hands of my enemies. My life wouldn't be worth a plugged nickel. I did not appear in court on August 5th. The day before, a bench warrant was issued for my arrest. Kamuk and I had become fugitives with every hand raised against us. And that concludes that chapter.
It is just so overwhelming, the sheer amount of violence that they faced constantly, simply for standing up for their human rights on their own fucking land, on reservations that are literally autonomous fucking land.
Yeah, and the fact that they spread a bunch of lies and saying that they were massacred and they were scalped and stuff just to rile up the peoples, and they came at them with army tanks and helicopters, and look what they said, 150 agents. So they went in there. There was the one that was trying to massacre the agent, should I say? So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad they stood up for their rights. I'm glad they stood
100%.
up for themselves. At least a fine example for us. Like, come and knock on my door and see and find out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But anyway, let me let y'all talk. I get a little excited.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I just want to say, like, no, yeah, you were 100% right. It's like, it's every single accusation, every single propaganda, every single anti-communist, anti-liberation propaganda that they have stated. Um, it's all the shit that they have said is shit that the U.S. military has done. Like they were talking about how AIM committed a massacre when the FBI literally sent 2 fucking agents that started shooting a city filled with innocent people who had done nothing to them. Every single accusation that it's literally just projection. They're literally just projecting the shit that the U.S. government does on liberation movements like AIM. That's literally fucking it. That's
Yeah.
literally been the case since forever. Now, for the Soviet Union, for the PRC, for AIM, for the Black Panther Party, and so on and so forth, they will do anything and everything to demonize, dehumanize, and villainize these liberation movements to embolden and bolster reactionary sentiments and white supremacist groups, to get people riled up and to strengthen the state by upholding white supremacy. It's fucking disgusting. Like, and they're just facing violence after violence after violence after doing nothing but defending themselves on their own fucking land. Like, God, it's just disgusting. Sorry.
It definitely is disgusting, and it's kind of hard to just even imagine. Of course, we can get a glimpse of it through some photos and through these readings, but you don't really know what was going on if you weren't there. Imagine we're talking about whole families with children and grandparents and stuff that were in these houses that were getting shot at by the agents. Oh, and their dogs even shot in the yard and stuff.
What the fuck? Yo.
And those 2 particular agents that showed up and were killed, they were in plain clothes, and even one was wearing moccasins, kind of like a mockery. So, and they didn't pull up right up to the door and announce themselves. They pulled off in the distance and pulled out their rifles. And maybe Kimberly can even tell us a little bit more about
please, yes,
the finding of the shootings.
Yeah.
And because they're trying to blame Leonard for this shooting, and then the ballistics, and talk about
well,
that.
If you have time, I'll first I'd like to recommend, if you want to know like a really detailed account, Peter Matheson wrote a book called In the Spirit of Crazy Horse about Leonard and all of this. And it was pulled from the shelves almost immediately and into litigation for 9 years. And it was found to be the truth. And so, because if there was anything on there, the FBI filed against them and litigated it for 9 years. And then they were finally able to release it. And it's a heartfelt, loving, detailed account by Peter Matheson, who was an ally to Indigenous people. And but I had noticed earlier when you were talking about Little Joe Stuntz, he that's something else that's really dear to my heart, because by definition, his was the only death that day, and he was killed with an FBI sniper bullet to the head. And then they put a jacket on him, an FBI jacket, to make it look like, and as you said, he was studying to be a medicine man. Yep. And his death was never investigated. Yep. And that just shows, and during that time on Pine Ridge, there's some people say up to 200 deaths. I mean, Pedro Bissonette left a baby shower or something, and they go over the hill 20 minutes later and they're loading him up and he's dead. Like anyone that was for AIM or what was for the traditional, the Oglala called AIM in there because it was just what they call the reign of terror. And for 2 years, they had the highest rate per capita of anybody for murders. And none of those deaths were ever investigated. And it just shows the disparity between people I don't know, just so that whole entire thing that was going on there with, it was just every day was terror. They were being terrorized, and to have two people
Indeed.
pulling up like in unmarked cars and shooting, of course you're going to defend yourself. And that's why his co-defendants were found guilty. But unfortunately he was tried separately because he feared for his life. And he had gone to Canada, and then someone told, that he was there. But in the Spirit of Crazy Horse, goes into much more detail. And
It's on Amazon.
it's yeah, it's on Amazon. And
Gotcha.
it's a pretty detailed story. It tells the story of, it's mainly focused on Leonard. And then there was another book also written called I Will, and it's about Dennis Banks and Dorothy Needham and her palace in Leonard and in the American Indian movement. But I would definitely recommend reading In the Spirit of Crazy Horse. It's the truth, and the FBI lost. And I'm laughing just because they fought it for 9 years and lost. So
it finally got released.
Yeah,
Indeed.
And Leonard Peltier, by the way, was also in Indian boarding school when he was a child. He was taken from his mother's arms, or his grandmother's arms. And so for the majority of his life, he went there. I believe he was 36. Was he 36, Joe?
Yes.
Till like the majority of life, he's been held some way captive by, and they asked him one day, he was 14, and he was listening to a meeting on his reservation. And they said, who stands up for us? Where are our warriors? And he stood up, and he's never sat down. So, but Joe Stuntz, though, that's another thing. Like, thank you for like talking about him, because I want to honor Joe's memory. And this whole, the shootout that day stopped the church investigations with the Senate regarding COINTELPRO and the American Indian movement. And they have never picked up again. And I want them to be picked up. I want them to complete their investigation, the Senate.
Oh yes, 100%.
Because they haven't addressed that. Like the shootout, just because that happened doesn't mean that they don't have to be held accountable for what they've done to the American Indian movement.
Of course, because even though COINTELPRO possibly may have not even been there, they have still done horrible, disgusting shit to AIM, to the Black Panther Party, and to every single liberation movements by BIPOC people, and I am willing to bet fucking bet that even though COINTELPRO may have not even been there, I am willing to bet that they supplied those agents with guns and supplies. I'm willing to bet
the FBI openly gave the goons their military, I can't say it right, like where they made them like military style weapons and ammunition and everything. The FBI supplied them. So during that time, Dick Wilson, he was wanting to sign away the uranium rights against the rights of the traditionals. And interestingly enough, the day that this happened, he was secretly signing away the uranium rights to Pine Ridge. And today, there are people dying of cancer on Pine Ridge from open mines to this day. To this day. And it had the American Indian movement and Leonard been successful and all of them in helping those people on Pine Ridge, they wouldn't have the deaths that they're having today from it. Wow. So I hold them responsible also for the many lives that have lost to cancer. And yeah, and Grandma Jumping Bull, like Leonard's an artist, and he looks at it as a positive thing that he learned because he was able to learn art in prison. So he's always positive. But he did a picture of Grandma Jumping Bull sitting on her porch with a bullet through like her photos and bullet holes all around her. They just terrorized. That was their home. Like they call it like a camp or a tent city, but it was the Jumping Bull's home.
Yep, it was their property. It was their land, and they just fucking took it from them.
And they were the Major Crimes Act says that they can only come for things of that have to do with major crimes. And I don't believe that a stolen pair of cowboy boots falls under the guidelines of a major crime.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that was a lie. Like, I'm pretty sure that was a fucking lie. Like, why would you just steal old cowboy boots? Like, I'm pretty sure that they made that shit up just to fucking arrest them. I mean, hell, they lied about, I think it was Hugh P. Newton stealing fucking ice cream or whatever. And they locked him up for that shit. So, like, yeah.
And Leonard wants to also remind people that there are people that have been there longer than he has. Mutulu Shakur was just released, but he was also because he says, I'm not the only one. You need to pay attention to Guantanamo. You need to pay.
Oh,
He said,
yeah.
people mistakenly say that he's the longest held political prisoner, but he wants that to be corrected and say the longest held indigenous prisoner, because Mutulu Shakur, Sundiata, like all of those people, they've actually, there are people that right now that have been there maybe within a couple of years, but he wants us to acknowledge them and respect their sacrifice also.
Oh, 100%, because Guantanamo, like, it's just fucking horrible. Like, there are prisoners there who haven't even had a court, and they're just there, just fucking there for years and years and years, and it's just horrible. Like, the shit that I've heard, like only rumors that I've heard of the shit that they do on Guantanamo is fucking disgusting. And Guantanamo Bay is literally ran by the U.S. illegally. Like they're not even supposed to fucking be there, but the U.S. doesn't give a fucking shit, and they're still there, even though Cuba was like, hey, can you please get off of our land? And they're like, nope.
Yeah. And that just shows kind of the heart too that Leonard has. He says, like I'm not the only one. People like, I'm just one man. You need to pay attention to all of this, you know. And interest, like one of the people at Guantanamo was 14 years old when he went there. Like, and then it was crazy because when Reagan went to talk to Gorbachev, he would say, Reagan would talk about human rights and all this stuff, and they would scream, "What about Leonard?" You know, all the Russians would scream, "What about Leonard?" He actually has so much worldwide support, and that we don't stand up for him here as like more.
I didn't know.
And yeah, like when I was a kid, they would talk of, they say "Free Leonard," and everyone knew who we were talking about. And even my daughter, one time I said "Free Leonard," she said "Who?" And my heart sank, and I was like I even see how I've kind of let him down as much as I know, and my father being an advocate for him also. But that's, if you guys can get it, help spread the word about him. He does symbolize all of the struggles of us in indigenous. He embodies all of those struggles. If you read a little bit more about him, you'll see like what I'm talking about, and just that he's never lost hope and has always been selfless in his pursuit of justice for all indigenous people, and especially for Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he talks about a food forest movement, and he talks about and Jennifer Bendry from the Huffington Post. She's a senior political advisor for the Huffington Post. If you want to search her name too, she kind of breaks it down in like his case in a way that like people can get it, like, and because there's so much details to it and the things that they've done wrong to him. And so I would recommend maybe reading some of Jennifer Bendry's articles regarding Leonard. She breaks it down. And right now, another thing, he falls under the old prisoner law, which was prior to 1983, and the way that they calculated the good time. There's a handful of prisoners that are still sitting in there that should have been released, and because they're calculating their good time based on the new prisoner law. And so by the calculations that I've seen, he should have been out. He's actually served 6 life sentences, and he was sentenced to 2. And another thing, like when Clinton was going to sign the clemency petition, the FBI went out there and marched, and they're not supposed to they're supposed to be neutral on these things. There was 500 strong, but there was like, where was the 1,000 strong of indigenous people for Leonard? They weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
So I get on a soapbox though about this. So I'll let you get back to your meeting. Thank you again for the time.
So thank you for contributing your thoughts, because this is a lot of insight that we didn't have coming to the table. You know, like I've heard surface level stuff about Leonard's case, but you know, thank you, because now I know a lot more details about what actually happened, what's developed since.
Same.
Like your input is absolutely crucial for people to understand what happened and what is still happening to him for no fucking reason. No fucking reason other than to just target him, scapegoat him. You know,
yeah. He should have never been there to begin with.
They suspended me in
You should have never been there.
That's what they said.
The government said somebody is gonna pay. So he ended up becoming a martyr for that whole Wounded Knee siege.
Mhm.
By the FBI, because they wanted to hold somebody accountable. And he was the one that was chosen to be held accountable, which he's still wrongfully in prison. We're talking 48 years now. That's not, it's almost half a century.
And yes.
Yep.
The killer part is, they're the ones who incited it. They're fucking
Exactly.
ones who actually came onto sovereign land that they were not fucking invited onto and committed an act of heinous assault, shooting up people's homes.
With
Yep.
no accountability.
Shot them. Whoever killed those two agents was acting in self-defense.
100%.
In there any fucking ways.
He says, yeah, I did it. And I was found not guilty.
Oh, his cousin even admitted it was him that fired the rounds that killed the FBI agents, and he was found not guilty even after admitting it.
Wow.
We had Leonard Peltier, and they were satisfied with that.
They went judge shopping.
God
Absolutely.
damn.
Like that just, it sounds like they just wanted to, make sure they could lock up Leonard because of his role in AIM and the enormous impact that he had as a political activist that they were trying to squash.
And
Mhm.
it might be interesting, like you'll read Wikipedia, it says that he was found for the murder of 2 FBI agents. That is not true.
Of
His
course.
current conviction is for aiding and abetting. And they changed the theory once they knew they couldn't get a murder conviction, but the aiding and abetting murder is the same sentence. But when asked who he aided and abetted, they said himself, which technically by legal definition, you can't aid and abet yourself.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
when
And
they
it's literally
can't-
impossible.
Yeah, so they'll change the Wikipedia, whoever it is, I'll change it back and then I got IP banned. But if you research the case, he's actually convicted of aiding and abetting.
It's insane. You can't aid
sorry.
and abet for a crime that didn't fucking happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the
Like-
FBI found they falsified the ballistics. They coerced witnesses. They had one woman that was a mentally handicapped woman. They threatened her to take her children away, which, as we all know, to an Indigenous woman, that's a very viable threat. They had used her in another as a witness, and she said she was his girlfriend, and later came out saying that she was scared because they were going to take her kids. And they showed her pictures of Annie Mae Aquash and said, "This will be you." And that's how they got him extradited, is by her. She had 3 different. One said that he was riding along and swooped her up on a horse, and so they went ahead and wrote it for her. And the third one went before the Canadian court, and they told him, so they extradited based on that alone. But when it came time to testify, when she wanted to tell the truth of what had happened, they said she wasn't competent to stand trial here. And they just used her to get the extradition. So.
Wow.
What the fuck?
That is Jesus fucking Christ. Also, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say this. And I want to add to what you were saying, Kimberly, in our last conversation. But oh yeah, it's just another thing that's never talked about when it comes to Indigenous people, and that it still is not talked about, and that still is not happening, is all of those Indigenous women that have gone missing and that have been kidnapped from reservations. All of those Indigenous women that haven't been seen and that are most likely either dead or sold into sex trafficking. And none of it is being talked about.
And I'm not putting anything like against Gabby Petito, the young woman that was like, they did the worldwide nation thing for her. It's tragic that she died. But interestingly enough, there's 800 missing and murdered Indigenous women in her same state that have never been looked for. And we have a beautiful, young white woman with blonde hair, and the whole nation is up in arms about it. It's like they're just disposable people. And then so it's just ongoing genocide by definition.
100%. When
I've noticed
sorry.
I've noticed that the rates of these kidnappings and disappearances increase heavily every fucking time the sovereign land of reservations is infiltrated by fucking, American like construction companies coming in that are working on like pipelines and shit like that. Every time that the reservations get flooded with all of these white men coming in, more indigenous women disappear, much higher rate. The rates fucking explode. And it's like, gee, can we look at the fucking data here and see what's correlating? Maybe.
So it sounds right. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, I was agreeing with you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was passionate about that too. Go on, please.
I just wanted to wrap that thought up with like, why the fuck does the American government still feel entitled to keep stepping onto this sovereign land that is not theirs to enter, let alone to be running these fucking pipelines and shit like that? And every time that they do, they're bringing greater danger to the people who live there.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Sister Zen. Oh, sorry.
No,
I just want to say. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, real quick, not to interrupt you, but we are 2 hours and 14 minutes in, Sister Zen, so we can still continue this conversation, but maybe best to end the video. I just want to say that.
We're actually just at about 2 hours, well, actually less than, because we started so late.
Oh, right.
So it's okay. Go ahead,
Okay,
Kimberly.
Okay, you're absolutely right about the man camps and the oil pipelines and the influx of missing and murdered Indigenous women. And that all goes back again to the natural resource, to the capitalism and trying to, and all of that. And then once again, that's why a lot of people are very passionate about not like when people dress up for Halloween and they wear Indigenous women's sexy outfits or something, it's like, it literally,
Slap in the face.
yeah, and it makes them not look at them as real people, and it's like we're just this hypersexualized like whatever, and we're just disposable. But that is absolutely right, and it goes back to and then we have like line 3. It goes across Anishinaabe, like you said, sovereign land, and they could have diverted it, and through that, I don't know if you know this, but the oil is tar sands that are taken from line 3, and they are from a foreign company called Enbridge out of Canada. So, and it goes across 250 bodies of water all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So and then it's sold to the Chinese. So we're endangering a huge portion of our clean water here in our country for a foreign company, for tar sands to go to the Chinese. And like, that more people don't stand up for these things is just amazing to me. Like water is life, I'll get off on that tangent next.
We literally need to survive. Like, it's just like, goddamn, and another thing that also is not talked about, but that still happens to this very fucking day, lynches still happen. Sundown towns still fucking exists. In fact, in Florida, where I fucking live, last year or like 2 years ago, or something along those lines, I think it was in 2020 or whatever, a black man was found in the forest hanged. None of it. They found his car a little bit away from where he was hanged. Nothing was robbed. Nothing was taken. It would literally just look like they just took him out of the car and fucking lynched him. But the police, as fucking usual, only called it suicide. Like, how the fuck do you do that? Like that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like that's just fucking hell. Like, lynches still fucking happen. Sundown towns literally still exist, especially in the South, in places like Florida and Tallahassee, and so on and so forth. Another thing that I also just wanted to add is when it comes to exploitation, when it comes to non-white communities, a lot of people don't realize, but and I talked about this before in an earlier chapter of this book as well. But fast food companies are so fucking exploitative of non-white communities. Like, it is fucking wild to me, because guess what? because guess what? Due to redlining and defunding, a lot of these non-white communities are impoverished and they have no way of getting any food. So what do these fast food restaurants do? They purposely put so much of their fucking fast food restaurants in these communities because they know that these people have nowhere else to go and they are forced to they're forced to eat and they're forced to eat these artificial, unhealthy but addictive foods to maximize profit. It's fucking disgusting, especially the poultry industry. But yeah.
Yeah. I never even thought of that. Thank you. Like I hadn't even thought about that. And so I learned something new today. Thank you for opening my eyes to that.
And you were saying, Kimberly, one of the things that's really important with the Rainbow Coalition of a collective group of organizations getting together to stand up for.
And BIPOC and marginalized people, like we need to come together and stop the lateral violence, and even I think it was John Lennon said, you better rue the day that the people of color come together, because it's gonna, so that's really that shows the importance of groups like yours, and I thank you for that, because we all need to come together and stand up against I think it's capitalism mostly, like.
Well, 100%. It is capitalism. All of these other antagonisms, racism, misogyny, the patriarchy, queerphobia, ableism, and so on and so forth. All of them are secondary contradictions to capitalism. They're byproducts
Absolutely.
of capitalism. So when we combat racism, when we combat white supremacy, misogyny, we're combating capitalism itself. We are combating all of the contradictions of capitalism by implementing a new socioeconomic system, a new way of life, a new society where we fight against and we combat the forces of reaction and these white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist pieces of shit. Because something needs to fucking change. Because if we don't start acting, we are going to literally die.
Yeah.
That's the importance there of understanding the extreme validity of intersectionality when it comes to like conversations that we have with other people where they try to paint these things as just, oh, it's just identity politics. No, there is a world of fucking difference between intersectionality, which acknowledges that we cannot just fight capitalism when we have to also fight the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, etc., that uphold capitalism, versus identity politics that, basically lead to nothing but pandering that is useless.
Exactly.
I like the way Bell Hooks put it in her book, Ending Racism, or Killing Rage, Ending Racism. That's the full title. She termed this white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, because you cannot leave any of those things out. They all fucking come together. It is one big mess. It is one multifaceted mess of fuckery that cannot be like unentangled from each other. You can't just fight capitalism and not fight the things that feed it and uphold it.
Exactly.
You have to fight it all. It's not just a socioeconomic issue. It is a cultural revolution that we need to go along with that.
Exactly.
Dismantle all of it. Because it doesn't do any good to, try to only fight against capitalism and not remove these other factors that cause further levels of inequity amongst the people. We need actual equity. And that means ending oppression for all.
100%.
I can't always put my words well, but what both of you just said, very well said. And thank you for that. I kind of want to write it down because you summed it up really well. And I'm like, there, yeah, that. I'm telling Joe.
Kimberly.
We got revolutionary smiles.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Very well said.
Kimberly, I have a question.
Yes.
Oh no, I just wanted to recommend this to you because I think having you on this would especially be wonderful. Comrade Joe already knows this, but every Tuesday we are reading Wretched of the Earth, and I was wondering if you would like to join in on these book clubs. It is every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I think having you there would be especially, especially insightful with you being a BIPOC comrade, and we could learn a lot from you. It's if you can, of course.
No,
But
I'm so honored that you would invite me and even want to hear what I have to say, because I felt like I've learned so much today, and it would be an honor to partake in the conversation. What was the book again that you're reading now, and how far along are you in it?
We are reading Wretched of the Earth. We just started section 2. We're a little bit away from it because so Wretched of the Earth, it's not like a traditional book, you could say, when it comes to like chapters, because it's not like small chapters contained into like one big overall story. You could say like it's very long sections. It's very long sections. So like for instance, because like Sisters Zen, we already read all of section 2, correct? Because it was the shortest one of all of them, correct?
Yes, we are 3 weeks in, and it'll take about 10 weeks to read it all. So if that helps, as far as like gauging where we're at with it, Kimberly. And goodness, it would have been lovely to have you on last week, because in section 2, he was breaking down the psychological and social effects of having been colonized. And there's so many parallels between what they experience over there in Africa from being colonized by France, to what indigenous people have experienced here being colonized by the British and the Spanish and the Portuguese. So many parallels that it's like, holy fuck. And being able to see the effect that it has on people, where those who are actually, seeing themselves as quote unquote benefiting from their adjacency to these capitalist, colonialist, fucking, illegitimate ass settlers coming in and imposing their economic system, that there's a factor of neocolonialism there that causes divisiveness amongst the colonized, where they end up with battle between each other because some of them see themselves as benefiting from it, like the motherfucker that was running Pine Ridge that Dennis was talking about in this chapter. Yes, thank you. His adjacency to the colonizers made him feel totally empowered to be dictatorial and to be a murderous cunt. And, here he is attacking his own people because he's wielding this power lended to him by the colonizers. And it's one of those facets that it was just really eye-opening to actually understand why neocolonialism has gotten such a grasp on so many people, and how they end up in those positions of power that they're relating more to the oppressors than to their own people who are being oppressed.
They're traitors.
May I say something regarding Dick Wilson? Okay, so I by no means am defending him, but I think it's also important to know that he was also the victim of boarding school. And some people, they truly were assimilated. So like he was taken from his family also, and he just went the other way. You know what I'm saying? So he was also in some way, it was a victim too, because he was like I said, he was taken from his home as a child and forced to, kill the Indian, save the man. And so it's kind of important to recognize that he was in some form of victim also. Not that I justify anything he did. I think he's the worst. Like I see his picture in my frame. And so, but like, it's interesting if you look at it that way, that he was also a victim.
Of course.
Right.
And
definitely
sense.
doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it, you know?
Yep. 100%.
It's an abusive mind fuck that all the kids who have been kidnapped and sent to these boarding schools, that's part of the goal of those boarding schools, is to psychologically break people and to put that divide between them and, you know, their people, and whitewash the fuck out of them. And look at how effective it is. You know, when you get put through that kind of abuse in a boarding school, it's no different than any other form of abuse when being raised. That you got two choices of how to respond to it. Either you're going to become reactionary and pay that abuse forward, or you're going to, you know, respond in a healthy manner of going, God, that was fucked up that happened to me. I would never want to see that happen to anybody else, and become a freedom fighter instead. Which way you gonna go?
Well,
100%.
like interestingly, like in my family, my father's father is, I say American Indian. I hope it doesn't offend anyone, but that's how I say, because it's in the treaties, and I say I'm American Indian till free. And so, for the legalese, I'm going to identify until they honor those treaties, you know. But, and also because my elders, they also say that. But so my grandfather was very strong Indian, but my grandmother was raised, she was in day school, and her father was taken when he was a child into boarding school. And he went like he would say, I'm a rancher. He was ashamed to be Indian, and like just the dynamics in our family but my grandmother married a man who stood up for who he was and stuff. And then actually the American Indian movement made a huge, she relocated, so her children didn't have to go to day school. And that's how we ended up from Montana to California. And it was the American Indian movement that made my father change and become proud of who he was. So I just want to say shout out for Dennis, you know, and his works. It's still going today.
Yeah.
And
Fuck
also like the effects of the boarding school, they then in turn didn't know how to be parents because they were never parented. And I mean, it just goes down even to my generation, you know, like in just a struggle and having to just all the dysfunction, you know. And it's disgusting. It is like, it's disgusting. And that's why I try every day to in some way to honor my ancestors and to try and break that pattern. I'm not always successful, but so it's thank you for all you guys you're doing. Like I'm excited to be part of it. Thank you.
Of course. I have a question. Kimberly. Do you I want to friend you. Do you have Facebook or Messenger, or do you use Discord? Because like I want I want to friend you so that way I can text you from time to time, if that's okay.
Yeah, you'll find my in the Eagle and the Condor Coalition. Joe has me as an admin, so you can see I don't have my picture up, but I have the no face, you know, just the no face is like a drawing, so you'll see it there.
Also,
Admin,
sorry.
to find me
Also,
easily.
Kimberly, I just want to say, Kimberly, I think you would love, and I'm sisters, and tell me if I'm wrong, but Kimberly, I think you would love to meet Comrade Sally. She is a fellow comrade as well. She is indigenous as well, and she is an amazing artist. Like, she has drawn beautiful portraits of people like Fred Hampton and Dennis Banks, I believe.
wow.
And God, you would love to see it. Like, God, it is beautiful.
Yeah,
Her
I would
work
love
is
to.
gorgeous.
I would love to see that, and if you, and also I'll share some of Leonard's paintings with you, which he's self-taught, by the way.
Oh, 100%. Oh, really? He self-taught himself?
Yes, in prison.
Damn, that I could hell. I can barely self-teach myself. Just by myself. So God damn, he does not deserve what he's going through. He is such a beautiful and amazing and just all around really kind human being. He does not deserve the shit he's going through. He deserves to be happy, you know.
Also,
Yeah.
I want to take a moment. Comrade Shay's been with us for about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow, I hadn't
Hi,
noticed. I am
Shay.
so sorry. I'm so sorry, Comrade Shay. I did not see you there. We were so invested. We're so invested in this conversation that I didn't notice.
That's okay, brother. That's okay. Sometimes no, that's okay. No, ain't no problem. I don't have no problem. You didn't offend me. But listen, first of all, I had to take care of some medical work. And so I had to, I wasn't even home. When I got home, I rushed to do a lot of other stuff, and I wrote something very briefly, which I would love to run it on y'all,
Of course.
So, but before I do, are we finished?
Yeah,
reading?
we're finished.
We're done
Okay.
with the book reading. We're just on the discussion part for now. But
Okay,
Yeah.
tolerate me for a few minutes. Your home base is your social class consciousness. There you will find oppressed nations of all colors. There you will find your winning card called mass organizations that will lead people to a final victory. There's a world to be liberated from the fears that keep them down. Rise up and dare to struggle. Repression will not stop us from overcoming it. We, the Attica brothers, will forever continue to fight and support people's struggles of the past, of the present, and of course, of the future. The Attica spirit lives on throughout prison struggles and prison struggles all over the world. To contact us, please contact us via Jorge Nieves Facebook. And that's basically how you like it.
I love it. All power, comrade. All power. Beautiful.
Thank you, comrade.
Thank you.
That's for all of us. So I believe I missed a lot of good ingredients today, huh?
Yeah, it was a good reading. It was pretty eye-opening of just the extremities of brutality that the US government and its agents will go to
Oh
to
God.
try to quell dissent amongst any kind of freedom fighters, but especially the indigenous. The way that they fucking attacked Pine Ridge that day was just insane. This chapter was about when Dennis was in court and he got called out because there was a shootout happening at the camp in Oglala, that two FBI agents came in plain clothes and just started fucking shooting into people's houses. They shot a little girl's eye out. They murdered so many people. And it's a clusterfuck of what happened, where it turned into just all out war back and forth, because no sooner were those two then, getting on their walkie-talkies or whatever and calling for help, that the FBI had to have been waiting right there. It sounds like a fucking setup to me. They rushed in and just started slaughtering people. And that's the day that those two agents that first went in there, they got killed in self-defense. It's those two agents that Leonard Peltier is still sitting in prison for, even though they know damn well that he's not the one who fucking shot him. That whoever did, his cousin admitted to it and they fucking found him not guilty. But whoever did, it's an act of self-defense. They came in there storming and started murdering people. Of course they're going to catch rounds coming back. But instead they committed an all-out massacre there and slaughtered everybody in sight.
Let me say to that, it appears as if the system would not acknowledge the fact that eventually they're going to have to face consequences. They don't see this country as falling. They see this country as developing further, and they got something else coming. because people all over the world have something to do with the United States. The United States has affected everybody all over the world, not just Native Americans, but all people all over the world have been affected and impacted in some kind of way by the United States. And so they have to, be accountable. And it seems like the accountability, they don't see that as nothing, because right now Trump looks like he feels like he's going to be president in the next president. He feels like he's going to be, and he might, because the system is set up in such a way that they know that there's a lot of shit that's happening. They know that a lot of people, man, all over the world are getting fed up. They know this. So they preparing themselves very deeply. They prepare themselves, And so we need to prepare ourselves just as well on all levels. I'm not going to talk about that, but on all levels. But basically, fundamentally, we need to prepare ourselves mentally.
We
100%.
absolutely do. I can't remember the details, but there was something I saw this morning that Trump, in his lunacy of envisioning himself as being president again, was talking about wanting to bring back enforcement of a bunch of anti-communist laws, McCarthyism bullshit. And that's something we definitely need to be aware of, that we are once again looking at a moment of, and first they came for the communists.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, sorry, I was eating something. Not only that, but I also think we especially need to be worried about Ron DeSantis and him running for president, because God fucking damn, if he becomes president, I am fucking telling you, like, if the sanctions on Cuba were not tight enough, if he becomes president, they're gonna become even fucking tighter. Like, like the way I see it, Pinky in the brain, Pinky in the brain, Pinky in the brain. I see I see Trump as Pinky and Ron DeSantis as the brain. One is fucking ridiculous, and the other one is like much more mischievous. That's how I see. That's how I see Ron DeSantis.
DeSantis was a JAG attorney, so not only is he a fucking psychopathic fascist cunt, but he's really good at bullshit said eloquently and using his feigned charisma and manipulation tactics to try to sway people to his side, to paint the ridiculously fucked up things that he's doing as being good. And I put that in very loose quotes of the word good there, because the only people it's good for is white supremacist fascist fucks.
Yep.
Specifically Christo-fascists. And it's downright fucking scary how he has gotten away with stomping all over people's rights with the shit he's done with Florida law. And anybody who fucking thinks that he would be a better option than Trump is out their damn mind or ignorant and uneducated about the man, because he's evil incarnate.
Oh no, yeah. Guess what he did?
Huh?
I don't know if y'all fucking know this, but in Florida, right, a law was passed where if any sexual if any sexual misconduct or sexual assault or sexual harassment of any kind is done, you can get the death penalty, something along those lines, right? And in Texas or in some southern states, a trans couple, sorry, not a trans couple, a lesbian couple were imprisoned because the child of a parent saw them kissing, and that parent fucking reported on them for sexual harassment. And Ron DeSantis just passed a law in Florida where if you are found engaging in sexual harassment, you could get the death penalty. And a lesbian couple was accused of a death penalty, was arrested for kissing. I hope
Ridiculous.
yeah, that like imagine if that shit happened in Florida. They could have been killed. They could have been sentenced to fucking death. Like,
It's one
that's
thing,
how
like,
fucked up it is in Florida.
there are certain things that I feel the death penalty is appropriate for. Like, if you rape a child, fuck you.
Yeah.
You need the death penalty. But with this heteronormative bullshit of like, oh, well, it's okay for a man and woman to kiss in public, but not for two men and not for two women, or fucking whatever the case may be, that they want to criminalize any showing of affection between a couple that isn't hetero, that's fucked. That's nothing
Yep.
but prejudice. That's fucking hatred. That's not a criminal act to kiss your spouse just because they're of the same gender. And for them to try to paint that as some kind of fucking sexual assault or harassment of any sort is incredibly fucked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we live
Like-
we live in an insane environment, you know, from the very beginning, you know, and as a result of this insane environment that we live in, it has created a lot of insane people. You know, most of the stuff that's happening in our society is only really, when you really look at it, it's creations by the system. You know, so with that, I need to say that I personally, you know, and I hear you, Sister Trish, but I personally won't accept the fact that somebody raped a child needs to be killed. No, not really needs to be killed. You know, you need to understand that, well, I'm speaking as a social worker now. You need to understand that people, you know, people like that have a lot of mental problems, and it could have been as a result of their upbringings, you know. So we need to, you know, look at that very closely before we say something. And I hear you, you coming from your heart, man, because I know how it feels, man, when you see a small child being raped by a sickle, you know, but that sickle may not be able. There's a lot of reasons why that go into you know, to for that to happen, you know. So I mean, I don't know, you know, but we, you know, like I said, crimes and all sorts of crime. See, we live in a criminal society, you know, and the first criminal in the agenda is the United States. So the United States has created various systems within itself to project their image, you know. So here we are, man, let's say criminals, you know, we committing all types of crimes, but when you look at it, who created us, you know?
A criminal system. Absolutely.
Criminal
And
Um,
I hear you, and I see where you're coming from there. The reason why I say that, as far as would support, you know, the death penalty for shit like that, is because after having looked at the studies and seeing, like, okay, they, like, say they've done their time in prison and they get released and have to go through like chemical castration, shit like that. Well, they can counteract that with just ordering some testosterone online. Even if you were to physically castrate them, the statistics show that they will then turn to using objects to penetrate and violate and rape children. Again, that, you know, the occurrence of recidivism there is so fucking high that, to me, it's a look at like the cost of them being allowed to continue to be a risk to the community. How many more children are they going to break? And I understand that, you know, most pedophiles were themselves molested as kids And it's another moment of like, okay, it explains it, but it doesn't excuse it.
100%.
And the risk that they pose to other children, if they're continued to be allowed to be part of the community, is so fucking high of a risk that those children's lives being protected from that destruction means a lot more to me, you know. And it's
Agreed.
like, what's your other option? Keep them imprisoned for the rest of their lives so that they can't be out here raping children? You know, what do you do at that point?
Let me say this. If you have one rotten apple in a bag and you take another rotten apple, you put it in that bag, what happens?
The whole bag spoils.
Eventually, exactly. So I don't think that prison is the right appropriate place for those type of people. I think that another type of institution needs to be in place to deal with that type of behavior, you know, because, you know, when you go to prison, believe it or not, when you go to prison, you suffer, man. You know, I know, man, I did 15 years. I suffered like a motherfucker. I was always constantly being abused by the police, being hit by the police, being thrown in segregation by the police, simply because I was a freedom fighter, you know, and my 15 years was horrible. It wasn't easy. You know, I was in places in prison, man, where you don't even see the door. It's so dark. They put you in the dark. And if you stay there long enough, that shit, it plays on your mind, man. You know, a lot of people, you know, come out of those type of environments, come out sick, you know, and so we have recidivism as a result of it, because prison is no prison. Really, prison is not for nobody. I don't think prison is for anybody. Prison should be what it is, destroyed completely.
I agree. And that was kind of the point of like me even saying that, of what's the other option, prison, because the prison system doesn't actually fix anything. It makes problems worse because of the abuse that you undergo when you're in there. So, you know, you could be right. We could need a different type of you know, place for people like that to be sent to, whether it be like a mental health institution specifically for those types of criminals. I don't know. All I do know is that we've got to do something, because the rate of recidivism there amongst pedophiles who have already, you know, committed that act of raping children is so high. It is detrimental to society, and it's destroying generation after generation, you know?
100%. Can I just say something?
Sure.
Yeah, and after you, can I say something?
Of course. I just wanted to add to what you were saying, Comrade Shay and Comrade Zen. I agree with you, Comrade Zen, like 100%. You know, like this system actively produces these types of behavior because when it comes to women being sexualized and children in general being sexualized, but especially girls and women, it doesn't just start when they're teenagers or when they're adults. It literally starts when they are children. Literally, that sexualization literally starts when they are fucking children. I mean, have you seen beauty pageants where they make these little girls wear provocative and sexual clothing, or how I remember this. I'm sorry, what? Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I just said yep.
As well as the fact that I remember the story where this father was trying to buy clothing for his daughter to go to the beach. He was trying to buy a swimsuit, right? But the thing about it is that he could never find a onesie. He could never find like a bra and a bikini together, like conjoined, like a pajama. He could never find like a onesie for a swimsuit. He could only find them separately, a bra and a bikini separately together. And that shit, like that shit right there is just fucking disgusting. You know, like that shit right there is literally stuff that you just see as a child. You just get normalized by that shit. You know, you just think, damn, that's just the way things are. And I agree with you, Che, when it comes to like, obviously, you know, these things are this capitalist environment that actively produces racist, white supremacist, misogynistic, queerphobic, ableist sentiments, obviously will produce individualistic reactionary shitheads, but obviously that doesn't make it okay, you know? Obviously that doesn't make it okay, you know, like the socioeconomic system produces white supremacists, but obviously that doesn't justify white supremacy or ableism or any kind of class antagonism. So I and I do agree that prisons are fucking horrible. Like prisons are not meant to actually rehabilitate people. They're only meant to siphon and exploit people and take away their surplus value and force them to do labor for nothing for these fucking companies and for these privatized prisons, all to maximize profit, especially in non-white communities. But when it comes to severe things, like, you know, like a child getting raped, like, I don't know, like you deserve death at that point. You know, I understand that that the socioeconomic system produces people like that, but like that's just abhorrent on every level. Like, I don't know. Like that's just disgusting to me.
But just keep in mind that the founding of this country was based on that too. They took a lot of
100%.
Native American children, man, and killed them. You know, just like they killed a lot of adults, you know. So when we talk about predators, we need to look at the establishment, the system who created predators. They created
100%. Yep,
you know,
they're the ones that created
they
it.
created it. You know, so
100%.
when we talk about dealing with predators, the only way we can deal with predators is if we change society.
100%. 100% agreed.
And you change the mentality, the attitudes, the feelings,
Cultural revolution.
all that, and the fact exactly. You know, because you know, look at Cuba. You know, you don't find that kind of stuff in there over there. Why? You know, you didn't even find that kind of stuff in Russia at one point. Why? Because it was a different type of society. You see, and even when we look at television, you know, we television is a form of institutional propaganda. And so we look at television, and sometimes we tend to believe some of the things in the news. I don't believe none of the news, none of it. I listen to the news all the time, but I don't believe in none of it, because I know that in order for
100%.
a newscaster to get on view and promote the propaganda that they have, they first must take whatever information they have and give it to somebody who senses it. They sense it. They look at it. Okay, you could say this. Okay, you could say that. Okay, you can't say this. You can't say that. It's the same way, you know. So all the information that we get in the news, you know, it's all censored. It's all censored.
100%. It's whitewashed.
Comrade Joe, you had something you wanted to say a moment ago too?
Yes. Well, and to start, great conversation, and it's nice to see you, Comrade Che, on here. You always spark a little flame under my combat boots.
We all do, brother.
But no, I want to bring it attention to, and let's not forget our kids in cages. You know, it's not addressed enough. The comrade sister Kimberly mentioned also Guantanamo Bay. Let us not forget that, or any of our political prisoners. And I like the way Che puts it. Society has created the criminal, and they've made it's a business, right? So they've made the prisons, they made the courts, the police departments, and the feds, and everybody else that comes with them, and all those that profit off of them, even the ones that make them sandwiches when they have lunch, where the judges and the prosecutors and all over there having lunch, rubbing elbows, and you think you're going to have a fair trial. Get the fuck out of here. Anyway, another thing too is the whole school to prison pipeline. It's set up in a lot of our communities where they target a lot of our youth, knowing that we don't have money for lawyers, knowing that some of the parents are just so busy working to survive and bring food to the table and have a roof under their head, over the head of their children and their families. So they target these youth, and then we got to go to the next thing, defunding the police and utilizing that money for preventative programs that don't steer the youth in those communities and give them an opportunities. Like back in the days, we used to have to go, we could go to the rec center. You didn't have to go to hang on the corner with the gang or go down to the park where the other gang was. You'd have a rec center that was kind of multicultural. And you had some little bit of a supervision there. Not so much of a supervision, but you had someone, even if you needed to talk to them, you had someone to talk to them. So, I mean, if we can keep those things in light. And as far as with the sexual predators, just hit the nail on the button. Those things get taught, those ways get taught. And then Comrade Gabby, you mentioned, and it starts a lot within our youth. And it's imperative to the concept of what we're dealing with is, okay, probably you viewed it, seen it, or you seen it, or somebody done something, and then you carry those traits. And then
that behavior.
And a lot of times it hits an individual when they're in their youth or their adolescence even. And then that carries with them for the rest of their life. I think Sister Zen said something about that too. It's like, if I'm not mistaken, we're all kind of like, and then I think Kimberly also mentioned it on also. What has happened to our ancestors, what happened to our grandparents, the way they raised our parents, the way our parents raised us. And I'm a father of a lot of daughters, how I've raised my daughters and how they continue to raise their kids. So, then we have to break the cycle sometimes, even if it's a drug-related family, an abusive family, or whatever the case may be. It's
generational trauma.
Yeah, the generational trauma, it's up to us as individuals to break that, or not to just follow into the cycle, but change it. And we all have a choice. And I was telling people too, like, even when you have kids, like say you have 7 daughters, 2 of the daughters might smoke weed, the rest don't. 2 of the daughters might drink beer, the rest don't. 2 of the daughters might be a little frisky, the rest don't. So and so forth and so forth. So even though you as parents or grandparents, or like it says, it takes a tribe to raise a child, what they learn and what they observe carries on with them in their life. And it's not always, I mean, you could even parents that really try their best and like send them to Ivy League schools and they come out a heroin addict, prostitute. Like, I mean, so there's no matter of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to depend on how much time you spend with the child and how they're going to turn out, whether you're a good parent or a bad parent, because I've seen kids from bad parents really be really amazing and successful. And Kimberly, would you like to add something before I
agree with
overtalk?
that. It's all of these systems where the two that have been set up where the parents have to work in order to, like you said, the roof over the family's head. And so I think it's imperative, like he also said, that we focus on the youth and those programs and preventative measures. And how we go about
100%.
that, I don't know. That's what,
We're working on it.
Working, maybe just starting, even within our own community and our own families, and
going from there.
Yeah.
Let
You're
me
awesome,
say this.
Kimberly.
Let me say this, if y'all please allow me.
Of course.
Even our way of thinking right now, many of our way of thinking, many of our way of behaving, when we talk about change, we talk about a lot of stuff, and I mean, just look at like the Native Americans. A lot, right? I have 2 friends that from time to time they come here. They're Native Americans. They'll say it, but they will not practice their culture. They say they don't practice the culture. Now why, I don't know, but they speak well English. And I'm pretty sure that was in that part of their culture. their whole system of behaviors are all Americanized. You know, and we, and as quiet as kept, we are Americanized. Chicanos is an example. Chicanos, that's not really, they speak English. That's not really their language. You know, and the culture that they raised up under, it's not culture. It's just like me as a Puerto Rican. You know, I'm speaking a foreign language, you know, because, you know, Tainos didn't speak English. You know, the Taino culture wasn't American, you know, so many of us are Americanized, don't even know it.
Yup.
You know, so when we talk, getting back to the subject of predators, you know, we are all programmed in a specific way by the system.
100%.
If I may say something, he touched on something that's really very, very dear to my heart and close to it, and something I advocate for is the language. And I try every day to learn my language. And with that, I found that I've learned a lot about, just in the way that the language is formed, I've learned a lot about the history of my ancestors. And so it's so very true to I say to decolonize and also language back. So I'm just agreeing with you. And as I say in my language, Gichida, I agree. So thank you for that insight. Like I totally agree with that. And I'm very passionate about that.
Yep, 100%. And it's because, yeah, you know, when it comes to decolonization and when it comes to, you know, cultural revolution, language is a very essential thing when it comes to it, because one of the first things that the colonizers did to try and whitewash, demonize, and let white supremacists and reactionary sentiments fester among the youth of non-white groups like indigenous people and Black people was taking away their language, whitewashing their culture, their way of life, their ancestry, and taking away that history from them. And language, and when it comes to language, and specifically what you were saying, Comrade Shay, about the Taino people, a lot of people think, and it's so sad, a lot of people think that the Taino people are extinct, that the Taino people were eradicated, but no, they're still here. They're still fucking alive. They still live in parts in southern Florida and the Caribbean, as well as the fact that people think that the Taino language has been eradicated and that it's extinct as well. But it's not dead. The Taino language, like so many other indigenous languages, got assimilated into Spanish around the Caribbean. There are so many, and because of that, there are so many words. There are so many words and phrases there are so many Spanish words in the Caribbean that are either a mixture of Taino and Spanish words or just Taino words altogether. Like, for instance, the word Havana or Havana, that's literally a Taino word. Literally, that's literally a Taino word, and so on and so forth. Their culture and their language never went away, and in fact, if I remember correctly, there are projects going underway in the Caribbean that are trying to rebuild the Taino language and trying to reconstruct it as much as possible. If I remember correctly, there are as many as 400 words in Cuban Spanish alone that are Taino words. So yeah, I just want to add that.
That's heavy.
No, and I'm so honored. Joe was telling me who this gentleman is, and for the Young Lords, like, to me, it's such an important group, and I can't even, if I begin talking about that, like, probably one of the should be the most recognized group and did such change, and so I'm honored to be here in your presence, and thank you for all that you've done. I'm very familiar, and Joe and I were talking about this the other day. I was saying the Young Lords, they were pivotal, they in change and social justice and everything, and I'm honored to be here. I'm kind of fangirling a little bit here.
Of course, no, please go on.
What's the name of that sister there? She sounds familiar.
Kimberly.
My name's Kimberly. Today, I've kind of just jumped in and your group here today, and I'm honored to be here and just with the presence of great minds and such articulate people. And thank you again for allowing me to
Of
sit in.
course.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. You definitely have, you have a place in your in here. This is your other home. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
I'm
Hell
so
yeah. You can come here
I'm like-
whenever, Kimberly, you can come here whenever you want. We would love to have you here.
Thank you.
You just sound like somebody I know.
Okay. Well, you sound like
Same.
somebody I know, like my grandfather. He grew up in Brooklyn. So
Well,
Jay,
I grew up in Brooklyn too.
I told Joe, I said, he's not from New York, he's from Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. Originally, I'm from Brooklyn.
Yes, I hear that. So
Sister Kimberly, I just wanted to add as well that I don't know, you're that you're just really cool, and I'm glad that you came here with us. You're very sweet and kind, and your insight on this has been everything, has been extremely helpful and extremely wonderful, and you putting emphasis on this chapter and the trial of Dennis Banks and the shit that was happening, and the shit that was happening here. It's very insightful, and you being here is I'd say is extremely useful, and your information is extremely valuable. And yeah.
I'm honored to partake in this because I have learned so much today myself. So again, thank you.
It's a mutual learning experience.
100%.
That's why we do this, because we all have much learning to be able to gain from each other and a lot of growth to do together. It's a beautiful evolution that we are making together.
100%.
And we're only going to get more powerful. You just watch and see.
Oh yeah, we're
All
gonna get more powerful. All power. As the bourgeois continue to oppress and exploit and subjugate the masses and uphold their own interests, they are subsequently shooting themselves in the leg every single time. Whenever someone is imprisoned, the bourgeois have potentially created a very dangerous revolutionary. When someone faces police brutality, they have the opportunity of becoming a revolutionary as well. Wherever there's oppression, wherever there's exploitation, there will always be revolutionary potential. There will always be people who will fight against the contradictions of capitalism. As Comrade Che Guevara once said, if to paraphrase what he said. Yep, Che's father. Actually, let me find the quote that he said, because I specifically want to quote it fully. Here we are. The quote reads, goddamn, small as hell. There we are. Wherever death may surprise us, it will be welcome, provided that this, our battle cry, reach some perceptive ear, that another hand stretch out to take up weapons, and that other men come forward to intune our funeral dirge with the staccato of the machine guns and new cries of battle and victory. Che Guevara. You can kill a revolutionary, but you cannot kill a revolution. You can't kill revolutionary ideas, because as long as there's oppression, there will always be people who will fight that oppression. We are all in the preliminary stage right now. We are all learning. We are all growing. We are all still trying to figure shit out and how to apply a scientific, dialectical, and Marxist analysis of our materialistic conditions and how to apply said theory through praxis, through revolution, through establishing organizational structures. But as we continue moving along, as we continue to learn, as we continue how to apply Marxism and how we can apply our knowledge and our experiences to our materialistic conditions to specifically meet the needs of our communities, to build that solidarity. Once we build those survival structures, once we engage in cultural revolution, once we establish that mass line, that connection with the masses and the vanguard party, they will follow in the ideological and political line of the party. They will engage in class struggle, they will engage in class agitation and organization. They will engage in observation, education, and implementing Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and Pantheism within our materialistic conditions. We are learning, we're all evolving, and the way forward is to make mistakes and to learn from them, to be self-critical and critical of our materialistic conditions, of what works, what's applicable, what can help, what can't, and how we can specifically learn and grow and better apply our knowledge to how things are. And yeah.
You know, I'm thinking of starting one of these rooms, book reading, but but give it a name. The name will be a Marxist perspective. Leave it like that. You know, people could come in. Cool. People could come in, sit down. You know, it's Zoom. You know, sit down, relax, and we put a topic. We put a topic out there, and we discuss that topic all afternoon.
Oh, 100%. Oh, Comrade Shay, you know that if you put us in the room together, we're gonna go for hours. we're gonna go talking for hours, for days.
No, but that sounds like a good concept. It sounds like
100%.
I agree.
100%.
It's just
100%.
needed.
Get everyone's perspective.
Yeah,
education is needed.
You know,
get everybody's perspective.
It doesn't have to be a Marxist, because everybody who struggles is not a Marxist. So what we do is we put a cultural perspective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, bada bing, bada boom.
Itself, man, that itself will bring a lot of people. And as you bring a lot of people into the group, you know, and you educate them. The ones that are not educated, we educate each other.
That's right. That's right.
100%.
To educate the uneducated and to re-educate the miseducated.
We're all
exactly.
Yep.
You know, because not every revolutionary is educated, because we don't think the same. We don't need to think the same, but at least we need to know where we're going. We need to know that there's a street with a post that say stop, go, and we need to know when to stop. We need to know when to go.
Mm-hmm.
And which direction? That's right. And which direction?
That's a good perspective, man. That's a good idea, ain't it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Learn from the people that have.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a revolutionary fist up for that, comrade.
Oh, hell yeah.
Learn from him.
How do you start? Gabby, how do you start the group with Fansanat?
The group for the book for Wretched of the Earth, I don't know if y'all noticed, but we're literally just using the same Zoom link. We literally use the same Zoom link as for the Second Rainbow Coalition book club. We use the same link. So
okay. I'm gonna have to use the same link too for a while.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
We were having a little bit of difficulty today with the Zoom room that we usually use. So Shamako and I have got to get that link fixed. It just kept giving me an error message when I was trying to open it to launch the room today. Yeah. So moving forward, I'll let you guys know as soon as we can get that straightened out. And you know, as for tomorrow, I'll have to let you know tomorrow if we have that fixed or if we're gonna, you know, just use the temporary link like we did today. If so, I'll make sure to message everybody with it. So that way we can still do the reading, but fingers crossed, hopefully we'll have the normal room fixed soon here where it'll work right.
Comrade Gabby, my
Yeah.
schedule has changed, so I'll have more time to be attentive on Tuesdays, which has
Hell
been
yeah.
impossible the last few weeks. Even going on these book reading groups, it's been a challenge, but my time has been freed up a little bit, so I'll be more attentive. So I miss you, comrades, and it was nice to be here this evening.
Hell yeah. I
We
miss
Missed
you
you too,
too.
Joe.
You know,
I miss
benefit,
you.
we benefit one another, you know, and just sharing our little insight and our experiences, you know, in totality, it like uplifts one another and brings us, you know, to a stronger unity to know that we do not stand alone. We are here for the masses, and it's not all about us, right? But it's for the
Yep.
masses. But collectively, when we unite and share one another's inputs and knowledges, it gives us that little boost to keep on pushing forward in this dog nasty world.
Yeah.
And with
Brother
that,
Joe, I
I want
meant
to
to
say
ask
all
you
power to
something.
the people. Go ahead, brother.
But I meant to ask you something, Brother Joe. Whatever happened to Brother Lobo?
Brother Lobo and I have actually been really busy this last couple of weeks. Not to mention, not only do we go on these book readings, but we are also members of different organizations, La Mesa, those Brown Berets, and because we've been the Sacramento thing kind of set us back as far as time and even getting caught back up. Since Sacramento myself, and how he's not more active, that's a good question. But I can bring more Brown Berets on here now that with my comrade sister Kimberly, she's more tech savvy than I am. Look forward to seeing more Brown Berets on here because I think it's very beneficial.
That'd be
That'd be wonderful.
Good.
And I also asked like those that have more contacts with the Young Lords and with the Black Panthers and AIM, why aren't we having more diversity in conversations? I mean, because we all have as revolutionary soldiers and soldierettes and freedom fighters. How do we get a little bit more strong and just in our book readings? Because I really enjoy coming, and then I only see just a few people. Like when there's so many people that can collectively get together to share knowledge. I mean, it's education before we have to be put on probation or some kind of segregation or something like that. So like, wow, we definitely got to put that out there.
100%, comrade, 100%. You know, it also upsets me a little bit as well. You know, I understand that, you know, everyone has, you know, their own life, especially people who have families of their own. But like whenever I join these book clubs, you know, and whenever you know I join them, it always makes me a little bit upset, you know, that there isn't as many people here as there were. And the thing is, I know that there could be more people here because whenever the political education classes happen with the New African Black Panther Party, whenever they happen, I always see around 20 to 15 people join at a time. So I'm like, there can definitely be more people here. So you know, it always just upsets me a little bit when I don't see as many here.
Well,
What happened to Guamay?
Huh?
Guamay, Che, and Shakur?
He and his wife are out of town this weekend. But I do believe if he's not able to join us tomorrow, he will be on Friday.
You heard the good thing that happened to him, man.
What happened?
What?
Well, his book is going to become a movie.
Oh, hell yeah.
Telling me about that the other day. the fellow who's doing the screenwriting for him finished reading his book and was so excited, like, fuck yeah, bro, I'm on board.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I'm excited to see that happen for him.
Yo,
It's
I am
absolutely-
so happy. I am so
But,
happy.
One thing I was going to say too, to try to encourage more engagement from the people in our groups. If you guys want to start grabbing the videos from the readings we've already done, they're posted on YouTube on the Second Rainbow Coalition page for these readings, and on the United Panther Movement Book Club YouTube page for the Wretched of the Earth readings. So if you guys want to start sharing those out on your pages and sending them in Messenger to your comrades, please do. Show them what we're doing and ask them, like, hey, do you want to get involved with this? Because the more people we have at the table, the better. This is building camaraderie. This is education. This is inspiration, the whole 9 yards. And it's so
100%.
important to have, like, these are not just education, these are bonding sessions we have here, and I love it.
I indeed. Whenever I get into these classes, I always feel like I bond with people and make new revolutionary friends, like Kimberly. Like Kimberly, I'm so glad that I met you. Like, you're so awesome. I don't know if she's there or not, but Kimberly, if you're hearing this,
We're still here. One
I
of the things I
gotcha.
wanted to say is both Kimberly and I are one of the things we're really good at is networking. And when we want to push something out there, it will definitely get out there.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I've been wanting to invite Kimberly, and I even brought it up to Kwame since the beginning of the Ojibwa Warrior reading. I said, well, why don't we have an Ojibwa representative speak? And they said, well, if they're not in one of our organizations, well, and I agree with that, because we got to keep our numbers small. We got to keep our circle small. But what we're doing is trying to promote something grander than keeping it small. So for safety reasons, do we have to moderate it or monitor it and keep it? And if there's a simple problem, nip it in the bud before it grows a weed and infests the whole field. And Kimberly, you wanted to say something? Excuse me.
It's from my experience, like, sometimes it is good to keep the actual meeting and the discussion small, but to market it, your YouTube channel, that actually opens it up, because YouTube is the second largest platform. And so I would be happy to share the videos after you have them, and because I have a pretty big social media following on other than Facebook. And so I would be, it kind of gets it out there if you do share it like that. And I'll be happy to share your videos and your so far. So
Thank you.
I'll be very appreciative.
I can start sharing them into the Eagle and Condor Club too. Comrade Joe added me to that page. So I can put some of those in there for you guys to start sharing out too. And here, just in case anybody doesn't have it, I'm going to go in the Zoom chat and put the links in there for the YouTube channels.
Especially the Ojibwa Warrior, bringing that into the Eagle and Condor Coalition, which is a coalition of all indigenous peoples from all Turtle Island, which also includes the islands and the Tainos. And we even took in consideration the Hawaiian Islands. So all the way from the south of Chile, all the way up into Canada, and all 4 directions. It's going to be a platform for indigenous peoples, and it's just another learning tool. And we have so many people on there that offer certain things, little bits and pieces of, just so as a collective coalition, we can all learn from one another. But that would be really nice, because a lot of people do follow that. Indigenous people follow that, and then maybe that'd be a good aspect tool into bringing more of the Aimsters in, because I with the coalition, I really want to see an equal representation of all the organizations that are on there. And it's, even though it's beautiful just speaking to a few of us, but imagine, like you said, if there was 30 of us, or there was 40 of us, or we hit 50, or we got 80 people joined in.
That'll be
So whatever
amazing.
message we send goes to 80 people that have probably like 2 or 3 people sitting next to them. So then it just tripled your numbers, you know, and then
Yep.
they spread that word on tomorrow. They go to work and they ride with a buddy and they're gonna like talk about what we talked about, you know what I mean? And it just goes on and on from there. And anybody else? Cameron, did you have anything else to say?
You know, just the importance of like, even just if it's just the recording, it's just sending that out there because it does open it up to a worldwide
Platform.
audience. Yeah. So
Well, I just looked at the clock, and for the recording, we are at a little over 2.5 hours. So I do want to wrap this up so it doesn't get to be so long where it would be overwhelming for viewers. If you guys like, I can leave the Zoom room open so we can continue the conversation off the air. But
Yeah.
if anybody has any thoughts that they'd like to say in conclusion for wrapping this up, by all means.
Well, in future reference, if we can keep them to an hour and a half, so that those people that do follow on Facebook and stuff, or whatever facet they follow and listen to, it doesn't overwhelm them, because 2.5 hours is a bit much, wouldn't you say? But
It is.
so we don't lose their interest. So we can keep them, and especially with recording, limit it to not more than an hour and a half. So we don't lose attention.
We usually do try to keep it between an hour and a half and 2 hours, and that's my bad there, because I wasn't looking at the clock to try to wrap things up in 2 hours. So yeah, it took us the better part of the first hour and a half to even get through the whole chapter. So I definitely wanted us to still be able to have a decent discussion, but yeah, at this point it's getting a little long.
Yeah, if you want to end it, sister, and then after that we'll say our final words and stuff on our own. I'm still here.
Absolutely. All right, I'm gonna close out the recording now. Thank you everyone for joining us today. All power.
All power to
All
the
the
people.
people.